we start.
There you go.
Okay, it says stop the
Well, why don't you just-
pause.
yeah.
You're
Good morning, fellas.
You were right.
Morning.
Good morning, and really appreciate all of your patience. Those of you who are here at the Moot, and then also those of you guys that came in or come in through Zoom. We've had I wouldn't call it major, but a technological meltdown. You guys, I don't think you guys, remote guys, can see me, but I am here. And we'll start our session. What?
Is that a plus?
That's a plus, yeah. Yeah. Let's go ahead and get started in John's Gospel. You'll see the screen. We're kind of doing a do around. Last time, it was last time that we came to a culmination in chapter 11 with the raising of Lazarus from the dead. I mean, that is quite substantial, and I think culminated in terms of what John was trying to communicate through the gospel, is that Jesus's public ministry culminates at this transitional point, and it's really going to build to what comes next. And we'll be getting into that in, I think, actually starting next week. In this the last time this session, we examined Jesus's 3 words, and those 3 words are "You sent me," and really simple words, but they become more, to me, more important as I've gotten older. And we had some time talking about what that means, what it has meant, and how that 3-word phrase has changed in our thinking, either changed or not changed. And so that's what we spent the time last time talking. This week we're moving on into what would be the response of this miracle of a man being raised from the dead. And I'll go ahead and read it. Therefore,
Hey, Mike, can I interrupt for a minute? So Vince and Tatsi, I'm not sure if you can see the screen. Put it on speaker view.
John, I don't understand what you're saying.
You're muted.
You're muted, John.
The screen is too little. So if you put it on speaker view for those of us outside.
I'm not connected, John.
I know you're not, but I'm watching Vince and Tatsi. They can't see the screen. If you change the view to speaker view, you'll be able to see the screen.
No.
Okay, John, I don't know. I'm in the middle, and the guys here are saying, no, that's not going to work. So if Bill's going to try this.
Where is the speaker view button?
Up on the right-hand side, view. It says speaker view. Okay.
Don't you change anything. It's just those of us outside viewing.
Yeah, all we do is see you, John.
Does that help, John? Let me ask you, do you see the different thing?
So you don't need to change the speaker view. You could leave it how you had it.
Well, I just did. I just did. So does that change what you see?
No.
Okay, then that was not a point. Yeah, back to Galley. Okay.
This whole Zoom thing is a patience challenge.
Can I move closer?
You know, I realize we're all trying to be helpful.
That's as close as you want. I could go a little closer.
Oh, now Bill's trying to make it bigger,
Just get closer.
but now it gets into the screen. Can we just stop dinking with it?
Okay, tell me when to stop.
Now stop.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, let's move on. And I realize, John, thank you. You're attempting to be helpful. And guys, we got some challenges this morning, but let's just kind of roll with it. And let's do that. Many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw that what he had done for raise a man from the dead believed in him. So we have the believing sector, but counter to that, some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. Therefore, the chief priests and the Pharisees, these are the ruling elders, ruling religious leaders, they convened a council over this whole thing. They got a group together.
Let's have a meeting.
Yeah, let's have a meeting.
Let's have a meeting. That's exactly right. Somebody's coming in the door. Would one of you guys could check that, just make sure if they're one of our guys, because I don't, because we're in an unsecured place here. Thank you. Oh, it's Carl. What are the, so they, yeah, let's have a meeting, and they were saying, what are we doing? I could just see it. What are we doing in regard to the fact this man, Jesus, is performing many signs? If we let him go on like this, all the people will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take over both our place and our nation. That's amazing. That's an amazing statement.
It's a big
And
jump of faith.
what's that?
That's a big jump of faith that. I mean, it might be true, but it's an awful big leap to justify their anger.
Oh, you mean, when you say the word faith, extrapolating from here to now?
Yeah. This happened to
I
Rome.
call it a conspiracy,
Yeah,
a conspiracy development.
Notice
Yeah.
how they put themselves in a place of their, before the nation.
What do you mean?
They're worried about their place first and then the nation.
Yeah, that's a very good insight. That's exactly right.
and to take over both our place and our nation. Oh my gosh, us too.
They're gonna take away, see, these guys frame themselves in a subordinate role, which they were to the Roman government.
Mhm.
Their jobs were at stake. They wanted security. They wanted definition. They wanted security. And Jesus was a threat, perceived threat to their security.
Well, that wasn't unlike, in a sense, Martin Luther and I don't know who the local king was protecting him, but he was risking not just his life, but I mean, it was a delicate balance there when he put his thesis on the wall. Either they're gonna burn him at the stake good and proper, and I can't remember the name of the guy that protected him, the prince.
I don't know.
But regardless, I mean, there was a lot at stake, again.
Well, and Martin Luther wrote the thesis and posted it on the wall as a rebellious act towards the established system.
Religious established system.
Yeah.
It's very similar. I mean.
So-
It happens over and over, I don't know.
So what we're gonna do, yeah, I think that's really big. What we're gonna do is look at, I got this slide, verses 45 through 46. And the overall theme of this slide is what has always been true. And Bill, that really segues right into exactly what you're saying. What is happening here has always been true. Prior to this and now, and we're gonna learn some things from this. So on one hand, we have, we got two perceptions. One belief and one unbelief. And we've already introduced the two parties. Under the belief heading, this is kind of a synopsis of what these people represented. These people are able to let go of their self-created framework of thinking. We have talked about this for weeks. And again, this is from my perception as I'm observing them. They are believing because they're letting go of their constructs in order to receive something else. They saw a man raised from the dead and they received that. And that means a receiving of something totally different. And it resulted in understanding. They now understand differently. They saw it, they believed it, and they gained understanding. This man is now alive.
So they did.
Notice how understanding follows belief. We had this discussion we had this discussion a couple weeks ago, and yeah, one or the other. They probably are chicken and egg, but in this case, they believed and understanding followed. So yeah, Bill's got something, then Dave.
It's also the thread which Jesus addresses later in his walk, but it's, if I see, I believe.
If I
see, I believe.
Yeah.
Thomas, but if it's something I can't see,
That-
how do I believe it?
Yeah,
So this is where they are. I've seen it, so I believe it.
yeah,
But now, what about people that hear about it, didn't see it, but hear about it? Are they gonna believe?
well,
Jesus
and
wrestles with it.
Blessed are those who have not seen yet to believe. Yeah.
but and with that though, but the witnesses here on the other side, these people saw it.
Yep.
This is what is so fascinating. We have two parties that both see the same thing. One believes and one doesn't. That's,
Well,
these people, somebody had a what?
well, they're not allowing themselves to believe, or their immediate thought was, this could be my personal destruction. But other people saw it, this could be eternity. I mean,
Yeah, they saw two different
you know,
things.
these people saw it and they saw the big picture, holy cow.
See, this is what
It's amazing.
This is what is so fascinating. You said, you have a man who is raised from the dead, my goodness. And you have two people, two parties witnessing the very same act and two diametrically opposed responses.
Well,
It is unbelievable how the mind works.
but the response in the right-hand side is, Jesus, you're right. I mean, now they gotta admit Jesus is right. He's the guy to turn to, and they don't want to do that. Because if you turn to Jesus, then everything goes to hell in a handbasket with them.
Yeah, well, I'm not so sure. It is true of the religious leaders. They've already said that. But there's an interim party who saw it
Right.
and they ran to report. And that's what we're gonna talk, that's who these people are.
They want to stop this.
Yeah, no, let me take a stab at that. These people, the ones on the right-hand side, these people witnessed the resurrection. And the resurrection of Lazarus. And these people are unable to let go of their self-created construct, whatever that is. And they, as a result, they therefore exercise their deep human need to blame. I think blame, this need to blame is integral to the whole thing. What do? They run to people who will think like them.
You know, I remember during the time of Nixon's, taking him to case for, you know, he had resigned and all that, they were gonna impeach him. And there was, in the impeachment, the people who supported Nixon, like my father, saw the people going after him as all these long-haired hippies, when actually there were quite a few establishment people, but
Yeah,
he saw that, and then when he
I
finally
can
resigned,
hear that. Yeah.
my dad said the problem wasn't that Nixon wasn't a crook, I could agree with that. He said the problem was I had to agree with the other people that they were right, and he said that was hard. There's
Wow,
two steps to that, you know?
That's a pretty high level of awareness.
Yeah, like I was in, okay, Nixon's a crook, it went wrong, but doggone it, now I gotta admit these people who I absolutely loathe
Test are right.
Right. He said that was a hard.
Thus a human problem. So we've already looked at this amazing contrast. It's mind-blowing. And what motivates one group and what motivates the other? I'm going to take a stab at that. Therefore, the chief priests, the Pharisees convened a council meeting saying, what are we going to do in regard to the fact that this man is performing these signs? If we let him go on like they're in control, all the people will believe in him and the Romans will come and take over both our place and our name. That's their fear of their spirit. So there's two groups. Some of the witnesses, these are witnesses, came to the Pharisees to report when, and then I'm making a stab at why. When internally conflicted, we as humans tend to run to those who we think will agree with us. Is that not true?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Their reporting action is motivated from a layer 2. Remember, we've talked about layers. This is how I kind of see development in the human, and I'm putting that here. I think these people are motivated out of layer 2, which is the need to belong.
Can you recite the layers again for our memory?
I will.
Okay.
Layer 2 is about the need, the true human need that is, because we're in the image of God, to belong. And it's about love, it's about receiving and giving, fellowship. It's the human interaction need. We're social people. And this has a very positive, and it has each side has a negative. These people need to belong. And so they go and find someone that they think is going to bolster their own ways of thinking. And so they go and report what has happened. Not in a positive sense, but in a negative sense. So they could feel a sense of belonging and identity with those religious leaders. That's my thinking. Yep.
I remember the little bitty thing as a young kid, there was a book called Penny Penny.
Call what?
Penny Penny. Penny Penny used to run around saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling.
Oh,
And he was running other people.
oh, yeah.
To be with somebody else, to, you know, the sky is falling, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
That's what these guys are
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, alarmists.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, Dave, that these people are doing it so they have a social acceptance by these people that they're bringing, you know, we're important, we're bringing this report to you. Boy, we got a problem here, kind of thinking. So I'm thinking these people are operating on layer 2, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's a way that I can categorize this kind of thing. Now, there's others who receive the report. These are the religious leaders. And they convene a meeting. You guys have already said that. Let's have a meeting. That's so common. And they convene a meeting in order to bolster support motivated by their own fear. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I see a nodding. Yeah, the whole idea is to get people to have a meeting and let's all talk about how terrible this is and what this man is doing. And if we allow him to continue, we're going to be in deep doo-doo. And it's fear. It's all fear-based. These folks are acting out of layer 1. This is layer 1, Bill, is the need to sustain life.
So
Things like shelter, food, water, physical aspects of life. They're concerned about their survival.
Well, word that's used a lot when you deal with the Pharisees and Jesus, the word jealousy pops up a lot.
They were jealous, yeah.
They're jealous.
Yeah.
I don't think they're really scared. I think they're trying to use people to get him out of the way because they're jealous of it. So the point is, I'm not sure how scared they really are, or if they're using it as a tool.
Oh, that could be. I don't know. Their statement, though, is saying if we allow them to continue, it's going to fall apart.
And there's an irony that's huge here. When Jesus rode the donkey into Jerusalem and wept, he said, if you had only known the hour of your coming, you would have been saved, but now you're going to fall in ruins. So their fear of the Romans come and destroying the country, Jesus was the answer.
Yeah.
And they're turning away and they're going to get destroyed anyway.
Yeah, the problem was Jesus didn't come as a conquering king.
Right.
And that is they had that perception in their head. That's what the Messiah should look like.
And-
We want a superhero.
Right. Since he's not a superhero, we're going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Carl.
I had just a little thought, that thought was, it came out in the news that, the fear that's in the hearts of people is pretty easily to arouse, and that guy aroused it. I don't know who that guy was, as soon as I say climate change, bingo, that's been in the news, and everybody's running for fear of climate change is coming, and oh man, and that guy that came up with that had to admit the other day it was a false pretext.
Well,
Yeah, that was on the news the other day.
there was also a guy that said, we as human beings, somehow, we attach to bad news. I mean,
Yes.
it's good
Way
news,
more than negative
way
than
more than
positive.
positive. We
Yeah,
gotta make
yeah.
a focused attempt to hang on to the positive, because it just slides up like Teflon.
Yeah.
Bad news sticks to us like Velcro.
In the business world, we used to talk about if in our company, if someone has a bad experience or a good experience with us, they tell one other. But if they have a bad experience, they tell 10 others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, my, I'm looking at the NIV and the statement from the Pharisees was,
yeah,
and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. So not our place, but our temple,
Yeah.
which was a huge fear for the Jews. I
yeah.
mean, the temple had been destroyed twice, right?
Well, and it was gonna get destroyed again in a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But their fear was legit,
because
you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So when these guys ran to the Pharisees and said, danger, Will Robinson, it's.
So isn't, go ahead and finish. and then-
So what I'm saying is, I'm not defending them, but do you blame them? For anything that threatened the temple and their nation?
Yeah,
You
they're right.
you had to say something. It was like the alarm had to go.
but isn't it true that when I'll say, I don't know about you, when I create a conspiracy in my head, part of it is true, but it's the extrapolation of what I do with it.
Right.
They're pointing to the wrong guy.
He's the solution, but they don't see how he could be the solution.
No, right, exactly.
He
Yeah,
doesn't have a sword on him. He doesn't have I mean, he's not coming in with any power that they recognize as power.
yeah,
So they're gonna lose big time. And it kind of plays out like, how would a pacifist response during some of our wars have, we don't see how that could have possibly won the war, but it was never really tried. You know?
yeah, that is really, I've been actually pondering that same thing. Yeah, what do you do with that? Yes,
So these are people that have seen Lazarus resurrect,
yes,
but they go. And they say. He casts out demons by the hills. They take on the negative. They don't want to believe that
Right.
this is the Messiah, even though all the things that he has done point to the fact that he is the Messiah. They want to ignore that.
Yeah.
Because of this fear that they're gonna
No,
lose everything.
I'm gonna disagree with you here. I think they saw he was the Messiah. He wasn't the Messiah they wanted.
I understand that part of it. What I'm saying is that they let the fear that they have of losing their stuff.
Right.
that's what they say.
It framed
But
what they wanted to believe.
right, but I think they might have processed, well, he raised the guy from the dead. So what? He's not gonna, I don't see him leaving their country out of the Romans, that they don't connect the two. And they say.
For whatever reason.
Whatever reason, they say, yeah, he raised the dead, that's awesome,
I
but
mean,
that doesn't help us.
yeah, this should back, and I'll get your comment, but think about this. If you and I were standing there and we saw a man, Jesus, we saw a man named Jesus. Speak into a tomb and a man comes walking out, that would absolutely be phenomenal.
Well, even more so,
But-
he didn't walk out. He was wrapped in linens, he somehow floated to the front.
Yeah, okay, however, okay, that could be.
Yeah.
But again, we're kind of going back to square one, but in reality, that is not the truth. The truth is, some believe and some don't. It's just amazing.
Believe what?
Believe what?
But
Believe,
believe that he's the Messiah, believe that he raised the dead, believe that he's their future.
he ought, well, I would say, we ought to listen to this guy.
Yeah, I would say, yes.
I mean, that's a big league
This-
action.
This is a big resume, for that, yeah.
Carl,
I was just wondering, just thinking out loud, what of the nation today? What of Israel today? Is there kind of some of this underlying current, the Jews have been, Hitler killed thousands and millions of Jews and Stalin. Is that fear laying in the background yet today with the nation of Israel?
well, very,
And you look at their defense system and you'd have to say, yeah, there's some fear that,
They were angry,
Yeah.
Netanyahu, or day, and he said, yeah, we're always watching out for this.
they're on the vigil, yeah.
oh, they're always watching out, yeah.
They're smart.
Yeah, and if you've been to Israel, I was there 20 years ago,
Yeah.
longer.
I think
And
there
it-
might be an interesting parallel between what Carl was saying and what was happening back here with the,
How do you see the parallel?
well, the Jewish leaders here were concerned about their stuff and their nation.
Yeah.
I think we have to remember that Israel today very much is not the Israel that God has called forth. Israel today is far more political than it is Jewish, if I can put it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
And I think the ruling levels in Israel, again, are more concerned about their positions and their power and so forth. Underlying that, they're drawing on the history of the nation of Israel. But a lot of those leaders in Israel today have wandered pretty far
Well,
from the tenets of the Jewish faith.
in the context of that, and Jeff brought it up from the NIV, if they don't have the temple, they don't have God's approval. And the temple is the presence of God. Take the temple away and they're just another country.
Yeah,
And yet, at this point in time, we get the feeling the temple is, the priests, the people that are in the temple are very, very corrupt. So it's like, we have God, but he's on our side. And we'll take him where we want. I mean, they're not behaving as they're supposed to behave. And they're seeking God to validate. I mean, they got the religious card to give them credibility. I mean,
and the
that's another
temple
way.
is the symbol of that.
That's a symbol
Yeah.
of it, yeah.
Yeah, and I want you guys to understand, I mean, what you're saying is true. I tend to think that they're an example of a deeper human problem. They represent something, because I see myself in this.
Yeah.
You know, who are the bad guys? Yeah, I'm, the good guys and the bad guys.
Not me.
See, they said the Romans, and Jesus would say, no, it's a little closer to home than that.
Yeah, a little, yeah. Carl, yeah,
Another connecting link here is the temple, they're striving to restore and rebuild the temple, when we were there. You can go in and see some of the furniture for the temple, elements, they're still moving towards the temple. And, these verses talk about all of their known is going to be destroyed.
But the temple, of course, back to Mike's statement,
Yeah,
the temple is the body of Christ.
it is, but they don't quite see it that way.
Bingo.
Yeah. Let's move on. The motivation, I've got, the layers that how I see it, these people, we can identify a little bit and understand a little bit of where their motivation is coming. And to continue that same verse. My comment herein, we see our collective human, there's the idea that I see this as a microcosm of a bigger reflective of me. And I call it the human dilemma. Some people call it the fall of mankind, the original sin. Yeah, I mean, there's different terminologies. I call it a human dilemma, the dilemma that we are in. Within an occasion, this is representative of this dilemma. and I'm making a statement, within an occasion of absolute goodness, life returning to a man, we see fear, alignment around a perceived enemy, the guy that's causing this, and the creation of a conspiracy theory. There, and we've already mentioned that. And that is absolutely mind-boggling. That just mind-boggling. All of what we see stems from self-created constructs. All self-created based upon, and here's a term we're gonna talk about more in the future, because we're gonna look at one particular belief system. Desire. We could use the term motivation, or longing. I think, making a point here, I think that these people have created these realities that don't exist. Part of it is true, conspiracies, and it's all motivated from right in here. A desire, a need, a longing, a motivation. It stems from in here. And so we're gonna look at this word desire. Desire in a neutral sense. There are positive desires, there are negative desires. We as human beings have desires, and those desires motivate us, is the idea. And it's desires within. They desire certainty within their job situation. They don't want the Roman engine to come and take away their jobs. And they mention the nation, but they're much more concerned about their own employment and what the temple represents. I think they're much more worried about their own skin than they are about the bigger picture. So where this leads, this idea, you've got, again, the contrast of the belief and the unbelief, and let's see where it goes. On the believing side, these people, very simple, it's only about 5 words, and they believed in him. They embraced what has actually occurred. What actually occurred is, however the guy came out of the tomb, I don't know if he floated or walked, or, he said, unbind him and let him go. I love that. I really, because Jesus does that.
Yeah.
I really like that. But these people embraced that. They embraced it. And go, wow. And as a result, this leads to a greater understanding. I'm seeing here, belief. A belief was followed by greater understanding. An act of faith, belief, led to a higher degree of understanding of what is actually true. And that's what we're talking about. Jesus mentioned it several times. Here's my final statement on this side. Within what is true, which is really real. The other constructs are only partially real. Within what is true, there exists true life. This is where the life is, because this is what God has authored. Within what we as humans create in our heads is how I'm looking at an aspect of death. Now, we know physical death. I'm contrasting life with death. Jesus talks about life and death in a fluid kind of way. There is the idea of physical death, but I'm looking at death from a broader perspective, where God is, and we could call it the kingdom of God. There is life. What we create is actually death in our heads. And we're seeing it here. That's my application of it.
I don't know if we create death or we just scared of death.
Well, I think we're scared to death, that's for sure. But I'm adopting and kind of attempting to think outside the death box, because Jesus, when I see him talking about it in a fluid, and the Bible talks about it, going back to Genesis 3, where it first enters, the day you eat of it, you will die. Well, they died, but they didn't die. You see that idea? Well, what does it mean then? They died, but they didn't die, but they did die. Yeah, you know, what is that? That's what I'm talking about. So on the unbelief side, these people continued, they continue with expended energy. In other words, they're putting their heart and soul into stuff they're creating, directed towards self-created thinking in order to protect, support, and self-create belonging. I did a summary statement of the unbelief side, both of those who witnessed and reported, and those who heard the report and are now, they're going to say from this day forward, they plan to kill him. This is a turning point in the book. And they're all doing it out of unbelief. They're creating their own worlds. The end result is to seek out and locate some place to blame. We're also going to look at that quite extensively. These people who I think are representative of a bigger whole, all of us, when something goes south, we've got to locate some place to blame other than me. And I think this is huge. I think this is really, really big. I didn't know how big it was when I started this gospel teaching, but where we're going to go to next week, and we're going to stay there for a while, the words of Caiaphas.
It's better than one person died.
Yeah. Unique to John's gospel. I think this is fascinating. We're going to look at that next week. And I think it's reflective of how we humans, the human problem. So the end result is that human nature is we want to locate a place of blame in order to restore the harmony. There's disharmony, and in order for the harmony to be restored, I've got to locate blame someplace that can be sacrificed in order for the group to come back together again. That is the idea. You understand what I'm saying? That's the concept.
That was already established in Leviticus,
Right.
the scapegoat.
Where did Caiaphas get that?
And yeah, it's the scapegoat. I don't
He
think
speaks-
thinking that way, but
Yeah, that's how we're gonna look at it next week. He was making a statement of fact. Because this is how it works. Restore the harmony so desperately desired by all. Everybody wants harmony. Ultimately, they do all this, this is my belief, to feel better about themselves. It's their internal motivation to feel better. It's what they do, it's what I do. So table time. Okay, we've looked at, and I'm really interested in hearing our responses. We've observed two very different responses to a life-giving event, belief and unbelief. Here's my response. I gasped. How can this be? But as I reach for the second breath, notice not the third, the second, very quickly, I see me. I see me doing the same thing. I see me still doing the same thing. I too have experienced the fear of what if this happens. I too have looked to find others to agree with me. I've done that, guys, numerous times. I go to those people who I think will agree with me, so I feel better about me.
Yeah.
I too have had dialogue with others resulting in conspiracy thinking. Guys, I would sit, I think I've probably mentioned this before, when I was a younger man in business, I would be like sitting in a concert, watching one of my kids at a school play or something. And all of a sudden break out, I get a panic attack, break out in a cold sweat that, oh, this is gonna happen and I'm gonna lose everything. And I had to go through that. I actually had to go through that to get to work through that.
It usually happens at 2 a.m.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, being gripped by a fear, what if? Yeah, okay, Carl.
Yeah, you know, look at the political arena today. What's going on? You know? We have
Well,
kind of
the
two
fear,
sides.
this is,
There's a lot of fear going on.
oh, it's everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Both sides play the same.
And it's very polarized, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's extremely, I mean, more than we have seen in our lifetime.
Yep.
So looking at today, looking at the biblical text, looking at me personally, and possibly yourself.
Yeah.
Can you think of a person? Yeah, let's put it in the positive side or positive spin. Can you think of a person that you know who has successfully, yeah, successfully. I knew that one.
Heard that verse, I'll get you
Thank you, David. It's, my mouth isn't working as well as it used, not that it did, but can you think of a person who has worked through this, navigated these waters? And what can we learn through this? I think it has a lot to do with transformation. But a person who has worked through this, can you think of an individual?
You know,
Outside of Jesus,
well,
he did.
you know, I think generally you find those individuals when you listen to eulogies given at funerals. But in the current time, everyone wants to align and to come to the middle ground, and find those people who come to the middle ground is considered a betrayal by whatever side you're coming from. And so
Yeah.
people tend not to want to make that claim while they're alive. But when they're dead, it's amazing how people come out and say, this person is one of those navigators.
Yeah.
So when I said think about this, I'm trying to think, I'm gonna go to funeral eulogies to find the person we're talking about.
You know, it actually, that, I'm gonna comment on that, and then I'd like to hear the rest of you. What you're saying is so true. And as I've looked at this idea that we're gonna be looking at, starting next week, I see that there's been this need for a sacrifice. And in a sense, that person at their death becomes the scapegoat. And it's interesting historically that scapegoats tend to be glorified, deified. And it's not only in the biblical, well, not outside of biblical context, is that once a person dies, they're glorified. Yeah, go ahead.
Heard a lot of eulogies in my
Yes, you have.
journey. And broadly speaking, there's two types. Particularly if you have known the individual directly rather than indirectly. One is the kind of thing we're talking about, where the nature and qualities and character of this individual are really elevated.
Yeah.
So you know this person had it together. And there are others where you leave and kind of say, look, that's not the person I knew.
Yeah.
And I go through what-
But we're very cautious on who we say that to.
Yeah. So go back to your original thing, you used the word construct.
Yeah,
And you said, how can this happen? Look to find others who agree with me, different responses to a life-giving event. From a 32,000 foot perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pilot over
go to
here.
the pilot, yeah.
The general term is, and you use the word construct. For the 32,000 foot level, we have constructed a box in which things are okay for us.
Yeah,
When we drill down to the closer elements, when something that isn't within our box happens, we feel threatened.
Yes, that is so true, so true.
For years, you've talked about the threshold of fear.
Yeah.
Getting across things that appear very, very different and are very, very scary or whatever.
Yeah.
And yet they're a part of the reality of life, and until we're able to face those and walk through that.
Yeah.
So I think the key is like these Jewish leaders in their structure, they have their box, and this Jesus was messing with the box.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
This is not a good thing.
You want to join the conversation? Should I turn the camera on? Because they're not seeing you when you're talking.
Okay, we're gonna turn the camera around, fellas.
And then you come and join us over here.
Okay,
And position yourself like we get in the photo taken a little, so everyone can be seen.
Pull up a chair, Mikey.
so do you guys, we're talking, we're having a great time here. You guys that are remotely, comments from you guys, anything?
They're muted.
I had a thought, Mike. And it went back to a previous slide where you talked about. Our ideas basically leading to death. And this idea that
Yes.
we tend to hang around with people that agree with us. And I don't know the verse where it says, talks about sin, and then sin gives way to death, basically. So I get in my head sometimes, okay, I'm pretty good, and I don't sin like Mike sins, or whatever,
You don't know.
So what I'm saying is I compare my sins to others.
Yeah.
So I get them minimized over here. Until I allow myself to fully see the truth. Like some of these people saw the truth and believed. Once I can get myself, only when I get myself to understand that my sin leads to death, can I take that to a point where I accept Christ's payment for that sin. That then leads to life. Now, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but what I'm saying is I have this box that I put my life in, and I say, I'm good. But I think that is dangerous, because that tends to lead to death. If I can take myself out of that box and say, no, I am not good. The only good in me is Christ, and I allow him to be that good and to take away the sin. Will I have that life? And I don't know if that's answered any of those questions, but it's. I think I need that fear in my life in order to get out of this. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where I can. Again, I'm rambling.
I got you.
Yeah, what I'm saying, if I say to myself, I'm good, I don't see the truth properly.
Yeah.
But when I can get past that and know that my only hope is in Christ, then I can see, like they did, what Christ has done, what the resurrection of Lazarus kind of pictures is, that Christ is the way to life. Then I can truly believe. I don't let my constructs give me a false belief that leads to death.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
well, I rather than me comment, Dave, you go ahead.
Oh, I'm waiting for John or Vince or Totsy.
Yeah, we-
You guys, you remote guys, you wanna pipe in with what? Responding to what Jeff said or something else?
So, Jeff, you say
Muted,
that,
John.
He's
Can't hear you,
muted, but
John.
I can't hear.
You can't hear us. Can you hear it?
John, you're muted.
I wasn't muted.
There you are. I can hear you now, John.
I hear you now.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I wasn't, but that's okay. Jeff, you were saying that, if I say I'm good, I don't see the truth. So is the issue for this two groups of people, belief and unbelief? Does it have, why do some believe and why do some not believe? Is it the need to be right?
I think it goes back to what Mike was saying in that it's a self-preservation thing. You know, I don't want. Right, it's like, I don't want to believe. That's something that is, I know in my heart is true, because it threatens something within me. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Golly. It's if I take the fear, the people that ran to the Pharisees, so they saw the same thing that the people saw that believed. They let a fear of loss cloud the reality of what they'd seen, and maybe Bill's right too. They actually saw it. They just didn't like what they saw. You know, they could have believed, they probably did believe that Jesus raised him from the dead. There was no argument there. But what does that mean to me? What that means to me is that's a threat to me. That's a threat. And I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to respond in a positive way. I want to respond in a way that protects my way of life, my, yeah, you know,
I think it threatened their idea of fellowship, but belonging is people say loneliness is one of the biggest drivers to bad behavior. And to belong at any cost, you know, bad relationship, you'll type into a bad relationship, you go with a bad group of people, anyone that lets you become a member, so at least to belong somewhere, you'll pay a high price for that. And that's where the peacemaker, Mike said, the question that we left at was, what do you think of a person who successfully navigated these waters? And my first thought was peacemakers. And peacemakers, and Jesus said, blessed are you, and I think he needed to say that to him. Because peacemakers, to make peace, usually leave one side of the argument and move to the middle. And as a result, the people they're moving towards don't trust them. And the people they're moving away from declare them to be traitors. And so they get hit with arrows from both sides. You know, they stand in the middle of the road and get hit from both directions. But that's the price of a peacemaker. And for some reason, I don't want to make this political. I keep thinking of John McCain. He moved, it's healthcare stuff. He moved to the more liberal side. And I don't know if the Democrats embraced him, loved him. They appreciated his vote, but they did let it go. The Republicans excoriated. I mean, they just hammered on him. But he's an example of someone moved to the middle and ended up getting beat up by both sides. But at his funeral, he was just eulogized through the roof. Of course, he had some other noble things like being a noble prisoner of war and all that kind of stuff. But that was an interesting test of a peacemaker.
So a peacemaker, you know, that's one way to look at it. Jeff, you made a comment that only when I understand sin leads to death. That's how you started your rambling, which, you know, you're trying to get to the heart of this. So what if that isn't true? I only said, what if? Right?
Gonna be a peacemaker.
Well, so we got two groups of people here, the belief and the unbelief, right?
Yep.
And the question is, you know, I forgot Mike's question. You know, I guess I roll at this thing. The question is, who's right? You know, are we looking for truth? But what if the things I believe aren't true? Or some of the things I believe aren't true? Is there anything bigger going on in this story? Is there anything, I've been wrestling with this for the last week. Is there anything more important than being right?
Why don't you ask an easy question?
Yeah.
Well, I think when you think about arguments and everything else, that's what drives the conversation, right? Mike says we tend to go with people we believe like us. And the reason, you know, I want to be right. There's something deep inside me wants to be right.
Like I spoke about my dad earlier, when this thing settled out, he was uncomfortable with being wrong. You know, even though, I mean, he understood he was wrong, but embracing that's a second level.
Absolutely. Well, think of the arguments you have with your spouse or friends or whoever, or the TV or politicians. Isn't it always I'm right, you're wrong?
Generally, yes.
And if you ever have, whether it's religious from one church to another, or from no religion to religion, or from one political party to another, when you've ever had I call it a repentance, a turning around, that doesn't always mean it's good, but a turning from something, you really castigate the people that used to be your tribe. I mean, it's sort of like, you can't just go to a new group, you've got to throw rocks over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it wasn't enough for Martin Luther to be right. As time went on, he found everything wrong with the Catholic Church. I mean, he had his thesis, but then after that, when they kind of told him, we'd like to burn you at the stake, he unloaded. And that's why when I listened to, what's the sound?
Probably the kitchen guy should show up.
Why would they show up?
Something on your computer.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta close it. It's never mind. That's me. Okay,
See, who is right?
and now the music is still. No, that's not it.
This is.
Well, that's coming to happen. That's coming through the cases. Okay, we got some music for you guys while we're talking.
Background music.
Yeah,
Elevator music.
elevator music.
Patsy, say something.
To me, it's not a question on whether I'm right or wrong. And that's why I always use for myself this concept of a leap of faith. Okay. And for me, what challenges my faith, and it's kind of built into a little bit of what Jeff was saying, is when I get focused on works. Okay. Am I doing what is right for me to be saved, kind of thing, subconsciously? So for me, it's actually the people that I know that have been through many life challenges. Okay. One of my biggest witnesses is a guy who was on the board of a prominent church, and his wife got involved with one of the people they were doing a prison fellowship with. So he got divorced. He gets kicked off of the board and whatever. But through this all, he maintains his faith and his belief in Christ as a savior. So he ends up actually a second marriage, marrying a Black woman and becoming an elder in a Black church. And he actually invited me to a Bible study of these older people, similar to them, to the Moot House, except these guys were even older than you guys. Okay. And that really got me into the scriptures, because they would study the scriptures in a really pure and loving way. And I used to confess some of the sins that I had, and they would just lovingly just kind of accept me still as I was, and maybe give me some godly advice and whatever kind of a thing. So anyway, that's when he said to point out somebody, that was the guy I was thinking of, a guy by the name of John Robbins. I don't even know whether he's still alive or not. Anyway, that's my thought on it, is that it's an individual thing. And for me, it's a walk to where I have to remember that this whole thing is not being right. It's actually making that leap of faith and accepting the fact that I need to do that and not worry about whether I'm right. Okay. And so if I worked about being right, then I can listen to my scientist friends who have all of these arguments that are logically against believing in Christ as my Savior.
So,
Okay.
so you think there's something bigger than being right? It's called,
That's right.
in
Right.
this case, a leap of faith.
Yeah. A leap of faith and accepting that I am saved by grace, not by works.
I think he says, can you think of a person, in terms of screening people to come up with someone that comes up, generally there's a commonality here. And that is, there will be a person who's probably taken heat from their tribe.
Right.
You don't navigate unless you have to cross swords with people who are part of your fellowship to agree with another side. Otherwise, you're just back looking for the amen corner to be happy about.
I was just thinking of the one Bible verse, love covers a multitude of sin. We can get out of these being drawn in if we will begin to walk in love with our fellow brothers and sisters. As we walk in love, then that can pull us out of the blame game. Who are we going to blame for problems that we maybe find ourselves in, if we will but turn and begin to walk in love?
So Carl,
It cancels out a lot of things.
So Carl, are you saying that love is more important than being right?
Yes, I am. I guess, yeah.
That's interesting.
Lay down your right to be right.
Yeah.
Mike has asked the question, can you think of a person who is successful in navigating? So I'm giving you a testimony to my bride. There was a couple who we have perceived as major decisions to make, whatever that might be. We try through prayer, we try to listen, we try to believe, try to step forth, not thinking that we're right, but thinking that we're walking or stepping forward what we understand the will of the Father to do. My bride has been involved for years on a very personal ministry with a number of different women primarily, and she has deeply followed that to the extent even that in household schedules, sometimes when I have something that is appearing on the calendar or we have something, her response will be, well, that morning, she says, I'm going to defer, the Father's running my calendar today. She may have either a scheduled meeting with someone, or she is in prayer about a situation or something. And until she has walked through that process and is at ease with what she feels the Spirit is telling her, then she feels released to walk in whatever worldly stuff I'm coming up with. So she has developed this discipline of navigating in trying to separate the spiritual from the carnal and to walk as God has called her, not as the world calls so many of us. So I'll give that testimony. Yeah. And let me tell you, kind of puts an imperfect guy in his place fairly frequently.
You know, I struggle with what Jeff says, and everyone says, all this stuff comes under the category, much of this stuff, except Dave's wife, comes under the category of orthodoxy, and it was thinking correctly, understanding correctly. But somehow it's got to be turned into orthopraxy, which is behaving correctly. And to make it, and there's guidelines for it. I mean, there's very tangible guidelines for what does it look like. And most of them you come out of you'll come out of the red letters of the Gospels, and you come out of the closing chapters of Paul's letters, which tell you what correct living looks like. You know, reconcile to yourself this person, make peace with this person. This person should be excluded for a while, or love. I mean, there's tangible things, and if you really want the summation, is that 1 Corinthians 13 that's read at too many weddings. It's a great checklist for checking if you're on the right track or not. Go down that list. You know, what is love? Well, he says love is not keeping a record of wrongs, not doing that. I mean, there's some real tangible expressions of what it means to love. And you can make up what love looks like. I'm going to get into tough love. Well, that's a dicey subject. I mean, yeah, you know, you can turn that into your own personal expression of getting mad. So, yeah.
So,
John,
yeah,
you
go
asked
ahead.
the question, John. Is there anything more important than being right? And I want to say that there's nothing more important than being right about what is right. You know what I'm saying? We can feel like we're right about something that is wrong. And we feel like it's important to be right on this, but actually I'm right about something that is wrong. So if I want to be right about those things that are right, those things that are true, those things that God calls right, there's nothing more important to be right about.
I was right 10 years ago about a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I couldn't change that since then. That's the catch.
Gotta learn to say not so fast.
Yeah.
So at this point in our lives, you know, are we willing to change? Are we willing to, you know, in order to be right about what is actually right, are we willing to change? Are we willing to, because this,
That's a good question.
We got the struggle of being human.
I think somewhere in that it's not so much, are we willing to listen? And that includes reading people who disagree with us, but you know, they're passionate, caring. I mean, they have character, but they're not on your side. Listen and reading.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah, so anyway, I'd like to bring up a controversial answer to Mike's question about, can you think of a person? Okay. When I was a relatively new Christian, I was up in Wisconsin when Jeffrey Dahmer was murdered. Okay. So I still remember that I was part of a Bible study, and there was a younger guy in there that couldn't believe that he was saved, that he was going to go to heaven. And so there got to be not a big discussion, but most of the people in the group were arguing that in spite of what he had done in life, because he accepted Christ as his savior, he was in heaven. So here I could actually, if I believed with those that those other guys were right and not the young guy who was saying, oh, because of what he did, he should never be saved. He should never be in heaven. Okay. I was agreeing with the guys, in my mind at least, that were saying because he accepted Christ, he's saved by grace, and he's in heaven in spite of what he had done in his earthly life. Anyway, I bring him up as another example, and this is a kind of a negative example in a way because of the life that Dahmer had led. But if I believe in in the gospel. And the good news is he's saved, he's in heaven.
Hey, fellas, I just realized, thank you, Totsi, I just realized it's almost 10 after and I gotta get going. I have a 9 o'clock meeting, so, and it's my stuff, so you guys, thanks for coming. We'll meet one more time this year, next week. And we'll try to do this again. Thank you for your discussions and we'll see you guys next week. Bye. Bye for now.
Bye.
No, I wonder where that was coming from. That's coming from you, Jeff. That little, there was one of the panels just showing the red light and stuff with nothing on it, and I realized you were another party to the conversation. Rather than just being in the room, that was a party to the conversation.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that's why I had that. It doesn't show now, but you turned it off, but I said, where's that picture coming from? It's a moon house when no one's in it. Well, it was going right over your shoulder to that, right like the wall.
Would you guys be so kind to help me tear things down? So I just realized I gotta get over to Windsor.